You're listening to the Sensuality Project podcast, where the messiness of real life gets sexy, hosted by Stacey Herrera. This podcast is intended for mature audiences only. Episodes contain profane language and topics of a sexual nature that may not be suitable for children. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Welcome to another episode of the Sensuality Project podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Herrera. I am excited. I'm excited this week because I am talking with my really close sister friend, Danielle. Melissa is like one of the core pillars in my sisterhood foundation. She's like someone that I can talk to about anything. Like, we have really expansive, deep, retrospective, introspective, we talk about everything. She is one of the people that I turn to, especially when I am in a uncomfortable space relationship wise, because she's so insightful, she's so objective, and she's so grounded in herself. And I just love that about her. So this conversation was so good and so juicy that I had to divide it in two. So this is part one of my chat with Melissa, and part two will come up next week. So stay tuned for that. And I don't know, this was just one of my favorite conversations so far, as I probably say that every week. I feel like that every week. But I just really, really enjoyed this chat so much. And I know that you're going to as well. I did have some technical issues on this chat, so I tried to clean the audio up as best I could, but, give a sister a break, so don't be too judgmental about it. It was too good for me not to use it, though. Like, the conversation was so good that I couldn't not air it. That's how juicy it is. So here we go. Like, we talk about foreplay often, so in an ideal world where everything is going your way, what does foreplay look like?
Foreplay. It's interesting because that's an ongoing, the absence of it is an ongoing conversation that I have, that I'm having with my partner. Foreplay for me is really physical and really sensual. So there's a lot of massage. There's a lot of making out and kissing. And then there's just within that, it's the buildup. It's what I really need, out of foreplay is the buildup, is the intensifying each touch, each kiss, the longer the touch, building up and intensifying until that point where it's like, I need you to put your hands on my pussy, or I need penetration or something. But before that, it's just, I need the buildup for sure. Yeah.
Like, how many minutes does it take you to not start lubricating, but to actually feel arousal?
That's a good question. I think I need a minimum of 15 minutes in general. A really good kisser could probably make it happen for me sooner. But I definitely, even just before that, I feel like it needs to be said that I need to be in a constant state of turn on, regardless of how long the foreplay is. And so what that looks like for me is that I have to really be taking care of myself. My self-care really has to be rigorous and intentional. So it means that I have to be hydrated. I have to feel loose and sensual. I have to feel juicy. That's the word, really, actually. I really need to be feeling juicy. And so if I'm already feeling juicy, because that's what I really mean when I need to already be turned on, is that if I am tired, if I am hungry, dehydrated, if I'm frustrated about something, I'm going to need a lot longer foreplay. And so I think that even before I get that physical contact with someone, that I need to be, there are things that I need to be doing for myself. My juiciness needs to be, I need to be overflowing, so, for sure, my cup, like everything in that cup is for me. So I need to be in the overflow. And then that will determine, um, the foreplay, what happens during foreplay, and um, how quickly I become aroused.
I love that you took some ownership because I think that so often we put it all on the other person. I know I have done that often, but then recognizing, I mean, I remember having an experience where I was like, I'm just not into this. And then thinking, the fact that I'm thinking that thought means I'm not in my body. Like,
Yes. 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 Yeah. And even to, what's really interesting is because I've been a quiet advocate for sex work, and
amen.
and what I find fascinating, because what fascinates me about, there's several levels of sex work that fascinate me, but there are moments when I'm having sex and two things come up where, or even just in the history of my sexual activity, where I have, and even the other practices that I have, integrated into my life, I've noticed where I did not have to be attracted to the person to have an amazing experience. um, I did not have to be invested in them, to have an amazing experience. And there are also plenty of moments where I'd be having sex with someone and I'm just like, wow, I need to be paid for this, because just something clicking in that moment and realizing that sex is so many things. And sometimes sex is not for the both of you. It just might be for that person, with that you're as the receiver, um, that feminine aspect, as the healer, the creator, the nurturer, sometimes holding space for someone is having sex with them so that they can get something that they need. Um, and so I'm just like, yeah, I need to be paid for this.
I am
So,
so with you. I am so with you. But do you find that it's much harder to be the space holder when you are emotionally involved with the person?
yes. Um, yes. So when you are integrating someone into your life, um, yeah, you have these. I want to. Yeah, you have this attachment. You have these expectations. You want that other person. I mean, well, let me speak for myself. Whether it's a platonic or a romantic relationship, I want the best for that person. I want I want them to become the best version of themselves, and to be in continuous pursuit of whatever that best version is, even if it really ultimately means that their best is without me. That can be difficult, but sometimes necessary, and you deal with that as it comes. Um, but yes, because when you're in a relationship with someone, when that person is at their best, it inspires and motivates and holds you accountable to yourself. Like I'm always surprised when I see, couples, and one person is really ambitious and the other person is just along for the ride. I'm fascinated by how that works, because I feed off of their energy. Like, it's for me, it's a it's a loop. I'm feeding off their energy, and I'm giving them my energy back. So it's this continuous loop of, you know how can we be great all the time, even in the mundane. How can we be always, um doing better, giving better, being fully engaged. And I don't see how you can be that way when that other person is playing small in their own lives, no matter what it is. Like if they're half-assing in any way, how are they? To me, it's like if you're half-assing with the stuff that you're supposed to be doing in your own life, that means you're half-assing in our relationship, because how you show up to one thing is how you show up to everything.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I've seen those couples and been just as perplexed.
Yeah.
Like, how is this even possible? I don't think that inspired is one of the things that a lot of people think that they need to get from their relationship. But I want to be with somebody that makes me want to be a better woman just because
Yes.
I fucking woke up this morning and I'm like, God damn, I need to brush my teeth a little longer and floss a little better because he up in there getting, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I want to be with someone that makes me notice where I am falling short on myself, that their reflection is sometimes a signpost,
right,
for me, and I can't say that I've been in a lot of relationships where I felt that way, but it's interesting because once, if I'm with someone in any length of time and there is not something that I find admirable about them, I get disinterested.
Yeah.
I get disinterested very quickly.
Yeah, for sure. No, I totally agree with them. I'm thinking back to some instances, especially to, I'm not really big on, I'm exhausted by potential.
Thank you, which is not the same thing as actually doing something.
Right. I'm exhausted by potential. I'm exhausted. Again, I'm not interested in a project. I'm okay with being in a relationship and observing that the way that I'm showing up and the way that I'm presenting myself might be new to the person, and giving them the space to adjust themselves and to decide if there's an opportunity for growth in our relationships. Always another fucking growth opportunity. And you have to decide, when you are in a relationship, if you want to be right or if you want to be in a relationship. So if you want to be in a relationship, you're going to do whatever you need to do to grow and develop yourself so that you can show up the way that you need to show up so that you can maintain and keep this relationship. And if you want to be right, then chances are that's the end of the relationship, because those two can't operate together. So I definitely I'm not interested in projects. I'm not interested in building someone up so that they can be better for me or better for the next person. I'm interested in them recognizing that their gifts and their talents, and recognizing that the person that they're in relationship with is in full support of that. And that me being inspired by you charges you up to keep up and keep going with whatever it is that you're being or doing. And so that if that's the reciprocity, that we're each charging each other up because we're so inspired and we're so exciting at who we are and what we're doing and how we're living. And that also adds to my juiciness, so if my partner isn't taking care of himself, and that's also one of my agreements too, that I think I got this from what's his name? His name is Mark. I think his last name. He has a really popular site on personal development. I think he wrote that book, How Not to Give a Fuck, whatever. Like, I'm trying to remember that type. That one.
I can't think of his name either.
Yeah,
it was
that
book
guy
that came out earlier this year, or
yeah,
the art of not giving a fuck or something.
Yes,
great book,
yes.
by the way.
Right.
I can't think of his name either, but I know who you're talking about.
So years ago, he wrote something about relationships, and in it, he was saying that his agreement is, I promise to take care of me for you if you promise to take care of you for me. And I said, you know what? That is the absolute fucking best. And I've tried to lead with that in all of my relationships, whether it's family.
Telling me that, and I adapted it from you. I didn't know where you got it from. I just thought it was like,
and I'm just like, that was just like ping, and so because at the time when I came across that, I'm coming out of this yoga practice space of talk of letting go of attachment, right? And then I'm also having these conversations with myself around non-monogamy and what happens, how monogamy um, traps us into not growing and being better. There are ways that it does that because I have this person. What else do I need to do? Because I've got the man, I've got the woman, so I don't need to do anything else. I don't, or I can stop doing it because I already got the thing. I've got the achievement, so I don't need to keep doing better or getting better or growing or whatever. And so I was, even in myself, I just said, I can't, I cannot, I don't want to be in partnerships where I'm the be all end all for my partner and vice versa. I don't want to be in partnerships where people think that they don't have to keep putting in the work because they got the relations, because they got the girl. And so, and then I think, aspects of my childhood and the ways that the ways that I've been socialized or conditioned to think about adulthood. One of the things that's most important for me is that I'm in control of my thinking and feeling and my time and my money, etc. And so when I saw that, I was just like, that encompasses everything about the way that I want to move in the world and the way that I want to feel. So my first responsibility is to myself. For me, if I'm not taking care of myself, then I cannot show up fully in this relationship with you. So I'm prioritizing my self-care above all. And if that means that I have to create boundaries, physical or emotional, then I'm doing that because only then can I show up and be present, be in my body, be present in the relationship, and also not be resentful, because another thing that would come up for me is that when my relationships would start to break down, it would occur to me that I was showing up more in the relationship than I was getting. And in doing that, I wasn't taking care of myself. So I didn't have anyone to be upset with but myself. And so moving forward, I have to take care of myself. I cannot put that responsibility on my partner to do the things for me that that only I can do for myself.
I agree. And I think that resentment isn't a nail in the coffin. It's a stake in the heart. Like once resentment has taken up resident, when resentment has become the triad in your relationship, it's a deal breaker.
Yes.
It's a deal breaker because parts of your body start to turn off. All of a sudden, when you're like, my libido is low, no, you're resentful. And so your pussy's now deciding that
it's dried up. Yeah.
Is do not disturb. Like it is not going to participate. It happens with men with erections. Like they get resentful and all of a sudden they think that they have erectile dysfunction, but they really don't. It's a deal breaker.
Yes, for sure. And it was really hard for me to recognize that. And in one of my most important long-term relationships, that was really difficult for me to acknowledge and to accept. And when I did, though, that was just like, I have to leave. I need to leave before I actually hate him. So I want to leave and still love him and still be his friend and still care about his well-being. Yeah, for sure.
I think that's a great point, though, because about ending, so often I hear this from friends, I hear this from clients, that they think that the ending of a relationship, for one, means that it was a failure, that it was a waste of their time, that it was all of these things. But that has never been my experience with the ending.
It's never been my experience. It's never been.
It just changed. It changed shape, and now we no longer relate to one another in the way that we once did. But I can't think of, well, maybe one person, but it was a very short relationship and they had some work to do. But otherwise, most of the people that, and I've had sex with more people than I've actually been in relationships with.
Same for me.
But for the people that I was actually in a relationship with, you'd be hard pressed to find one that doesn't have great things to say about me, because
girl,
it just ended.
hello.
And that is one of my most prideful
yeah, I am proud of that for sure. I definitely, if I would be surprised if any of my exes had something negative to say about me, and I broke
about who you are. Though.
Yeah, I broke this man's heart, this important relationship. I broke his heart. But if you called him today, he wouldn't have anything negative to say about me. If I called him and said that I needed something, he would be right there. He would be right there.
That speaks volumes to the fact that you take good care of yourself now. Even when it doesn't look like it needs to look. Because, sometimes self-care, some days it's a 10, some days it's a 2. But, but it speaks volumes about how you show up. And, it's interesting because I'm vain. I am still enamored with my reflection, just as I was when I first discovered it as a toddler. I am still vain. And in terms of like relationships, when somebody else is acting up, my vanity prevents me from acting up with them. That as soon as they start acting up, even though I want to act up too, because sometimes people really be asking for it. But I always think, if I act up with you, you're going to validate your wrongness.
Yes.
And I would rather you not have anything to measure up against except for your foolishness. And if that means that I have to swallow some pride pills, I will swallow them. Because when this is finished, when you look back at the situation and the circumstance, the only thing you're going to see is you acting a damn fool and me being an observer of you acting a damn fool. And oftentimes, like, I've had girlfriends be like, I can't believe you just being stupid, not saying nothing. And I was like, it's going to take a while, but this person is going to eat every fucking word.
Yes.
Because if I participate, are they going to be able to say, I knew she was crazy? Rather than I was crazy because she didn't say anything or she didn't do anything. Initially, that wasn't as conscious. Like now it's a conscious choice. Before, though, it was a vanity choice. It was me trying to look good. It just worked out in the long run. But I think that that's a really important part, is in terms of disagreeing. People that spend a lot of time in relationships focusing on how compatible we are, how well we get along, if we like some of the same things, if we like doing the same things, if we're on the same page in terms of where we see ourselves in 5 years and all those things. But I think that one of the most important pieces of relationship is how you disagree, because how you disagree speaks volumes about you as a person, way more than how you act right. But how you act up tells a lot about you. So sometimes it takes a long time in a relationship because, it can be hearts, flowers, and starburst, for years before something major happens where you have to be in the space where it requires one or both of you to take a step back or to calm the fuck down or whatever. But it's in those moments when you really can see the true nature of somebody.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my God. Is there anything that grows you more than a relationship besides business?
Love and livelihood for sure. Those are the most intensive personal growth experiences that you will have, is being in a relationship with someone and growing a business. Yes. Yes. There's so much inner and outer work that you have to do to have what you want. And to, I think, just even thinking about that, I think we have, we've been indoctrinated with the happily ever after, whether it's Disney or Hollywood romance movies, that the women are always swept off their feet by these really suave and captivating men. But there's all this work in between that never gets spoken about, and about how you maintain that, and and it's just, but if you're really committed and you're really in it, then you do have to acknowledge that it's about your own personal growth. And that's actually been why I've stayed in relationships where other people have been like, you stay there too long. And I just go, well, there's something that I needed confirmation or validation for, something I needed to continue to put the work in for myself before I could say, okay, now it's time for me to move on. And it's the same as with a business. Like if you're working for a company, before you quit a job, did you get everything that you needed from this job? Are there more skills that you need to develop to take into the next place? Do you need to save some more money? Do you need to build some more relationships so that when you walk away, you're not just at a loss about what you're going to do next, or how you're going to ask for, how you're going to create the next position or opportunity? It's the same thing. How you show up to one thing is how you show up to everything. Yeah, and I think that people, for sure, the same way we think about how we leave jobs, that we have an exit strategy for jobs, whether you write a letter of resignation or you give your 2 weeks notice. Aside from those moments where, the environment is unsafe and you actually have to leave right now, it's okay for you to think about, how you want to end a relationship in the same way you think about how you would want to leave a job. It's okay to have that conversation. And that's another thing that people don't do, where, like you said, let's have a conversation about how we are going to disagree about stuff, or what happens if we can't resolve our differences. How do we end this relationship intact, or as much as we can be intact? How do we end this relationship as responsible and healthy individuals?
There isn't a lot of conversation, again, because how we do work and relationships are very closely tied. But when you start a job, before you accept the job, you talk about salary, you talk about benefits, you talk about days off. I got a vacation coming up. Am I going to be able, I need to be able to still go. I'm not going to be here for this day and that day. I need these particular religious holidays, or whatever the
Right.
negotiating part is. But we don't do that in relationships, especially because, like you said, we've gotten this romanticized introduction into what a relationship is supposed to look like, because we've seen it on the movies, we've read it in books. And I love romantic shit, by the way.
Me too.
If you look at it and not look at it as fiction, it's very easy to be disenchanted in your real life because it looks like that. And if that's your measuring stick, then you're always going to be off by a foot or two.
Right.
And people don't negotiate, though, on the front end of a relationship, and then they don't renegotiate, because at a job you get a performance review.
Yes, that's your opportunity to renegotiate.
Absolutely. You get to say, I need this, I need that. This isn't working. This is working. I could use a little more training in this. I could use some more help in this area. In relationships, it's like, at the beginning, are we together? Like, that's basically like, we're together, and usually there is not even any talk about what together means, because
everyone assumes their version of monogamy is the same.
Right. And most often it isn't. So if I look at her booty, is that cheating? If we're together and her booty is so big that I can't help but follow it down the street, am I cheating? If I have a conversation about a woman with a woman about our disagreements, am I breaking a rule? Like, there's no conversations. So oftentimes people break rules or trust that they didn't even know was a thing. And then there's no check-in. So even if there is, however small, a conversation at the beginning, after that, there's no more conversation. So then 5 years down the line, and usually doesn't take 5 years, but let's say 5 years, 5 years down the line, your needs are not being met because your needs have changed, because you're not the same woman that you were when you entered the relationship. And there was no performance review.
Right.
There was no performance review. Interestingly enough, I'm reading the book right now. Let me see. I brought it in here because I flagged a couple of pages. because I knew that I didn't know where the conversation was going to go, but I had a feeling. But the book is called Watch Me Disappear, and it's fiction because fiction has such
I'm going to write that
great.
down.
It's so good. In fact, I checked it out from the library and it was due yesterday, and I cannot put it back because I still have a quarter. I'm willing to pay the fine because I still have a quarter to go.
Yeah, definitely go take the book back and say, can I check it back out? Pay my fine, check it back out.
I didn't max out the checkouts, but somebody's waiting on it. So I'm gonna be.
Oh no, you can't take that book.
Yeah. I'm staying up tonight. I stayed up to 1:30 last night trying to get through. But the premise of the book is this woman disappears, and it's a year later, and then she's presumed dead. So now her husband, of course, is being charged with the task of declaring her legally dead because all of his money and all that stuff is all tied up. Can't get a life insurance payout, nothing, because there's no body, or whatever. And so, he has to run an ad in the paper, as a last ditch effort. Have you seen this woman? If it's you, can you call? All this stuff or whatever. And now all of a sudden he's discovering things that he didn't know about her. And he was writing a memoir. And a memoir, all lovely things, because they're like chapters of the book that are just like parts of his book. And then he starts to discover things about his wife that he didn't know. And now the memoir's turning dark. And he starts to remember and acknowledge the things that he chose to close his eyes about. Wow. And when I was reading it, I thought like, oh my God, I know that I've had relationships where my nose was so wide open that I couldn't see for looking. And then something happened or the person did something and I was forced to actually see. And one of the things, and you tell me if this has ever happened to you, one of the things that I notice when I'm enamored with somebody, a lot of time can go by and I can still feel charged and attracted and all of those things. But once there is a truth that cannot be reconciled, not only do I see them differently, but they smell different to me too.
Oh, wow.
Like,
I'd have to think about that one. But wow. Yeah, everything changed.
Everything. Like I had an experience where, and this was someone I had never had, we disagreed, but we never had any, it was just like, he'd have an opinion, I'd have an opinion, but we just didn't see things the same way. No big deal. We had lots of those moments. In fact, those were some of our best conversations. But then there was this thing that was a truth that he kept hidden. And when it came out, it jarred me awake. And after that, I remember smelling his fucking feet and thinking, I ain't smelled your feet in all these years. And those feet stink. But I couldn't even smell because when you love somebody, not only does it make the world more beautiful, and it does, it makes food taste better and it makes stuff smell good because the chemistry in your body will literally turn off anything that is adverse to the experience you desire to create. But once the wool is open, once the wool is off your eyes, everything, including scent, comes back to reality. And I was like, oh my God, I can't even be in the bed with his feet.
Wow. I have to really think about that.
Well, it's interesting because I've heard, and I don't think women realize it, but like I remember being younger and hearing a family member complain about her husband and talk about how she couldn't stand his breath. And once I got older and had that experience, because I thought, you dated him and you married him. And I always could smell his breath, like thinking, oh, it was terrible. But when I heard her saying that, now fast forward to me being a grown up, I was like, oh, she probably didn't smell his breath because he had the kind of breath that when you were around him, you think like, how does she even lay in bed with you? You know what I mean? It was like really pungent. But now I'm like, she probably didn't smell that. And that's how she was able to be with him because she couldn't smell it until her feelings changed. And once her feelings changed, her nose literally opened.
I really have to
Biology is powerful.
It is. It is.
It's kind of like ovulation. Your face looks completely different.
Okay, so speaking of that, I actually told a friend of mine the other day that I really need to keep a journal about this, because a week ago I was looking at myself and I said, wow, you look really young. Like in this particular moment, you look really, really young, like just youthful. And I was just like, whoa. And yes, and I was ovulating, and so I
Yep.
was just like, this is amazing. Because like the body knows exactly, I'm still in that space of where are the fertile men. And so
Yep.
my body is positioning me for it to be the most attractive to
The
the
most
available fertile
radiant.
men.
It's funny.
And I was just like, whoa.
In my when I ovulate, I get a message that says you're ovulating, talk sweet.
Oh, wow.
Because like I put it in there to say that, because your voice is more appealing when you're ovulating.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to remind myself to use that to my advantage when
That's
I
so
am
funny.
ovulating, to also not just sound sweet to somebody, but say sweet things.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome. I might have to
Because
steal that.
it's so powerful. I mean, everything changes about the way that you look, your smell, your skin is more clear, you're more radiant. And again, your voice changes. Well, you've got an amazing voice anyway. So I can only imagine, girl, you can get anything you want when you ovulate.
Oh, I'm going to pay more attention now. I specifically noticed that my face just looked softer and rounder and younger. And I was just like, whoa, that's really interesting. But I'm gonna start paying attention now to my voice to see how that changes and
Well, you
some other
probably won't
things.
be able to hear it, but maybe you should be
I'll do, you
record
know what?
yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you'll be able to hear the difference in your own voice when it's on a recording as opposed to through your own ears.
Yes.
Oh, I can't wait to hear how that's
I'm writing this down so I don't forget.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear how that sounds for you. It's so powerful.
It's awesome.
It's so powerful. Well, let me look, the foreplay question was so good. So now I'm going to ask you, since we're talking about the senses, what taste do you enjoy on a man's breath?
Wow. I've never thought of that, and I have no idea.
Well, you know what made me think of it, and what made
What's
me ask you was because I told you I had this whiskey shot here in case I got
yes.
froggy. And I do not particularly enjoy whiskey or bourbon or whatever, or scotch, even any of the brown liquors actually, but I love the taste of bourbon on a man's mouth.
I probably would say, it would be, and I'm a bourbon drinker, right? And I've been around whiskey drinkers. It's probably more smell for me than it is taste.
Well, I think because you know how when you are tasting wine, or especially, but I think it's more potent when you're tasting like a brown liquor. Like I had gone to a Chivas tasting, and
Okay.
one of the, so they ask you to taste it, but then they tell you to smell it, and you smell it with your mouth closed, but it's a completely different experience when you smell it with your mouth open.
I'll have to.
Because when your mouth is open, you can actually taste the scent. And so that's what it's like tasting a man's mouth when he's got like bourbon. Oh my God, it is so fucking sexy.
I have to, I'm going to have to, we're going to have to revisit this. Because now I'm going to be like, okay, honey, eat this.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
I'm going to be trying to figure out how to secretly do this with any man.
And it was an accidental
just like, let
discovery.
me just get up close.
Yeah, it was an accidental discovery. I was with someone and he was drinking a glass of bourbon. And again, I'm not like a brown liquor drinker. And when he got close to me, before I even touched his mouth, my mouth was open and I inhaled and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. I was like, don't kiss me, just come here. Like, it was so delicious that and again, it's not something I do not particularly enjoy the flavor drinking it myself, but to smell it and taste it on someone's mouth is really sexy.
It's never occurred to me. I have to think about that. I mean, I know what taste would turn me off.
Me too.
And that's usually cigarettes and weed that turn me. The taste of that turns me off. But I do not recall being turned on by a taste. So I have to think about that. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked because I would not have even, it just happened to line up. And I was like, oh my God, I like that. I didn't even know. I would never have even, because usually even when you think about like food and sex, it usually has to do with you putting food on a body and licking it off or something, but not just like this transference almost.
Yes. Oh yeah, how their body is assimilating it. And
I was surprised.
Turned on by a taste.
Yes, it was pretty amazing. I was like, And it was like, it was an old bourbon too. Like it was aged and it was like an expensive, I can't remember the brand because I'm not into it, but it was like something like really old and aged. And like, I could smell the oakiness and everything. I was like, oh, this is so nice. It was very sensual.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very sensual that I was very surprised. But, I'd forgotten about it until I poured this shot. And I was like, I have chamomile tea here in case my throat got froggy. And I was like, and in case I start to feel stuffy, I'm going to just have this shot here and I'll just sip on it to keep me open.
That is definitely something to add to. I mean, do you talk about this in the sensuality project, to how to really have sex and intimacy be this full body experience?
In my group program that ended several months ago, we did talk about sensuality being a thing, because so often when you hear that, people automatically think sex. And I'm like, but it's all of the things in addition to that create the sensual moment. It isn't penetration. It's because it's very sensual even to just like look at someone eating your pussy. That's like sensual. Yeah. It's not just like the feeling, it's just like the thing. Or men love to look at women licking their dick. It's like, because it's a very visual, sensual thing, and it enhances the experience. Just like tasting bourbon, smelling it with your mouth open changes it completely. Or even like with wine, it's the same thing. If you're a wine drinker, when you smell the wine, if you smell it with your mouth open, when you hear people and they're like, oh, this one has hints of citrus and floral and blah, blah, blah. You can't smell that shit unless your mouth is open. When your mouth is open, you're like, oh, there's the honeysuckle. Because honeysuckle in here. Rancid grapes or whatever. But the minute you open your mouth, it enhances the experience. It changes. You can then experience the flavor notes that they're talking about. And I think that, so often people think that it's something that they smell, but smell is a very elusive sense. And it's not like there's not a lot of intel, like a lot of information on smell. Besides, they know that it's linked to emotion. They know that it's linked to memory, but they don't really have a lot of concrete stuff. But it's experiential.
Yeah.
It's experiential. If you're feeling depressed, that's a great way, as opposed to sad. Your nose is not very impacted if you're just sad. But if you're depressed, your smell is severely impacted. But there's no one tells you. So everything sexual is different if you invite all of your senses to the table.
For sure.
It's more it's not, that's what being in your body is using the tools that came with your body to enhance your experience. And sex is one way, but we can do it with everything. Like eating a meal with your eyes closed, the same way when you get ready to pull into a parking space, you're parallel parking and it's tight. The first thing you do is turn off the radio.
Turn the music down. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with food. Like if you really want to have a powerful eating experience, close your eyes and feel the texture, smell the flavors, taste, it's because it's not, most of the time we just put food in our mouth and we barely chew it. You look at your stool, a lot of the stuff is whole because you didn't even chew. You just put it in your mouth. chewed twice and swallowed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just corn that you're seeing in full effect. It's other stuff too. But when you close your eyes, it's very challenging to not be present with all of the sensation and the texture and the smell and the flavor. You can narrow down the spices where you're like, that is not cinnamon, that's nutmeg. You know what I mean? Very different flavor, but if you just eating it regular, you think everything tastes the same. Oh, that's cinnamon. No, there's no cinnamon in here. So, but sex is like that too when you savor it. But I have also found that keeping my eyes open helps me to stay in the room.
I've had that for me too. And that's interesting too. When I was practicing orgasmic meditation and we would do the group ohms, a lot of the facilitators would give the direction to close your eyes. And that would annoy me because there were moments where I needed to bring myself back into the space and opening my eyes and looking at my partner, even if I didn't actually see what his hands were doing, was a way for me to reconnect to him, for sure.
Particularly when there's eye contact.
Yeah. I've started kissing with my eyes open too, as an experiment too.
How do you now? Do you find that you get distracted looking when you see someone so up close that you get distracted from the experience?
No. It's also too because I do have a partner that kisses with his eyes open, which I first thought I still kind of think is weird. But so sometimes I just look at him, at his eyes. So it's weird. So I guess it just depends. If it's a makeout set, like if we're really making out, then I close my eyes so I can just feel more. But I don't have any conclusions yet. It's still too early for me. I'm still.
Well, let me know.
Yeah.
I still kiss with my eyes closed for the most part, unless it's during sex. But I have found that I really enjoy sex with the light on.
Okay.
And I enjoy being able to really look in the person's eyes if the person can stay with me.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes people turn away, not because they don't want to be present, because they're afraid of what emotion you're going to see. Mm-hmm. So if the person can be there with me, I can be in my body and stay in the room, and my orgasms are more intense. And I have way more orgasms with my eyes open if the person can be with me.
Okay.
It's so good. Like so good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about consent. I was just having a conversation with my girlfriend earlier today, and I was telling her about an experience I had with someone where we had gone out and he was being very gentlemanly. And so when it was time for the night to end and we hugged, he, kissed me on the cheek, but I was feeling aroused. And so I knew he wasn't going to say anything. So I said, "Can I put my tongue in your mouth?" And she was like, "Well, why did you say that?" And she's like, "Why did you ask him instead of just doing it?" And I said, because it was obvious to me that he was being very careful, and I wasn't sure if he was being a gentleman or if that was a boundary. And because I wasn't sure, I didn't want to just lean in and start putting my tongue in his mouth. So instead, I asked him if it was okay, because that gave him the option to say yes or no. And then that cleared space for me to say, like, oh, he was being careful, as opposed to that was a boundary that he didn't want to cross, because not everybody liked tongue kissing. So then she said, "Well, why do you think why do we kiss with tongues in each other's mouths?" And I said, because that's a very primitive thing.
Yeah, it's a very primitive thing, and it actually even also babies put things in their mouths to, that's how they learn to identify differences.
And that's exactly what I told her.
They can tell, it's like they can tell the difference between a key and a pen, like because of that oral identification. And it's just, tongue kissing is another way. It's an exchange. It's another way to communicate and to explore and to understand someone. I think that we take words too seriously. That's an issue in our culture. And I'm saying that I'm saying that as a motor mouth. I'm saying that as someone who likes to talk about everything for days, that we take words too seriously.
I am right there. As a fellow motor mouth, I agree.
And even to go further with that, and to just go, even just to say that women operate from the neck down. And even though your tongue is above your neck, the act of it is a full body. It's a bodied experience. And so women who, and it's not to say, it's like women who are, it's the feminine principle that is the feeling, embodying aspect. And, we're in this culture that doesn't allow men to express their full humanity and to really embody their feminine aspects. But that's the way that women connect. And even speaking about consent, it's interesting. And I think that it has a lot to do with, again, I'm going to go back to Disney and Hollywood romance, that the story is that in male female relationship dynamics, the man is the chaser, right? He has to chase. The woman plays her demure role. And in almost all of the stories, the women are taken a little bit by force. Like if you pay close attention, a lot of the stories are of women being, there's a subtle coercion. That's actually interesting. Which one? I think it's American Dad. There's I don't remember the episode, but there is a clip in the episode where there's a scene where a man is he's pretending to be Sean Connery's James Bond. And he just keeps repeating, "You're going to have," something to the effect of, "You're going to have sex with me now." And she's like, "I don't want to have sex with you." And he just keeps repeating it over and over again. "You want to have sex with me?" And she's like, "I don't want to have sex with you." Until finally she gives in and she's like, "Okay, I'll have sex with you." And that plays out so much in Hollywood romance. And you're right. And even and it's just, it's interesting because men are socialized and conditioned to not ask for it, just take it. And I think that you can have that, but you have to be in agreement. You have to be in agreement beforehand. And it actually, I feel in that moment that you actually recognized his humanity by asking for permission to put your tongue in his mouth. Because we forget that about men too, that they actually have a humanity piece.
It's interesting. I had a girlfriend a while back. We were talking, and she was talking to this guy that was a little resistant for reasons that had nothing to do with her directly, about getting involved with her. And because he was like a friend of one of her close family members. And so he had expressed that he was attracted to her, but that he had a lot going on with himself personally. And also that there was this, other dynamic that he wasn't ready to breach yet. And what that meant for her was, I need to turn it on more. So that meant that she flirted more, and she was a little more frisky, and she was often way more suggestive. And she was telling me, and she was like really feeling proud of herself. Like, I know eventually he's gonna whatever. And I said, "You owe him an apology." And she was like, "What?" And I said, "You owe him an apology." And I said, because if he was doing that to you after you drew a line and said, "This is my line," and he kept trying to push, for one, you would say he was stalkerish.
Yes.
And he was out of line, and he don't know how to take no for an answer, and all of those things that women say. And I was like, but you have been violating his boundaries. I was like, you owe the man an apology. You need to tell him, he told you no, that he wasn't ready. And for you, that meant green light. When he was clearly said, red light, stop, you kept going. And I was like, but because of conditioning, he's not looking at it like that, but that's what's happening.
Yes. Right. Because
I was
for
like,
sure, if the
owe
roles
him an
were
apology.
reversed, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you be talking shit to your friends if he was doing that, and they would be on the soapbox with you. Oh no, you need to leave him alone because he crazy. You know, like all of the things that we say, but not ever really owning the fact that we do the same thing and not being able to accept, because as a woman, you know, we don't get rejected in that way as
Mm-hmm.
often as men do.
Yes.
You know, and so she just felt like, she was like, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize. And I was like, yeah, you owe him an apology because he drew a line and you keep crossing it every single time you talk to him. You know, and consequently, once she apologized, of course, he changed his tune and of course things move forward. But that's neither here nor there. She was violating his boundaries, and women get away with it because of the dynamics that we never really look at. Like they don't just need consent, we do too.
Yes.
And they deserve the same level of, you know, compassion in that way that we expect, because a guy would not be able to get away with that
for sure
without it becoming a big giant thing.
Yeah.
So layered, so many so many things all the time. The Sensuality Project is produced, edited, and hosted by me. Music by bensound.com. The Sensuality Project podcast is a production of stacyherrera.com.